Imagine the sheer, eerie silence. The roaring waters have finally receded, the storms have broken, and the ark's heavy doors creak open. Noah and his family step out onto a completely empty, renewed Earth. Welcome to this explainer, where we're looking at humanity's literal second beginning. It's a profoundly humbling thought, really. The entire future of the human race, every single person, culture, and empire, now rests entirely on one single family. I mean, no pressure, right? Let's dive right into this incredible moment in history.
The stakes here are impossibly high. The old world is completely gone, washed away in judgment. It's a blank slate. Everything that humanity will become after the flood, every single nation, every culture, every language, every civilization will emerge from these three lines. But here's the profound catch. The floodwaters washed away the old world, sure, but they didn't wash away human nature. That fracture that began way back with Cain and Abel, it didn't disappear. It actually survived the flood, carried right inside this small group of survivors. Humanity is united again, but it's definitely no longer simple.
And that brings us to the number 3. Because when Noah steps out of the ark, he doesn't step out alone. He's got his 3 sons with him, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, I want you to look at these 3 not just as dusty historical survivors brushing off the mud of the ark, but as 3 distinct streams of humanity. They're the symbolic founders of all future civilizational trajectories. 3 sons, 3 completely different responses to life, 3 streams that are going to irreversibly shape human history.
So how will humanity handle vulnerability? To see how these 3 streams diverge, we don't look at a massive battlefield or some grand architectural achievement. We actually look at a deeply private, uncomfortable moment in a tent. Because, as it turns out, surviving a global apocalypse doesn't protect you from messy family drama. The incident of Noah's drunkenness is a profound psychological crucible. Noah lies uncovered in his tent, a moment of deep human weakness that really could have stayed private. Instead, it becomes this massive test of how the newly preserved humanity will respond to compromised honor and extreme vulnerability.
Notice the stark contrast in how the brothers react here. It's exposing weakness versus covering dignity. Ham sees his father's nakedness, and his immediate instinct is outward. He goes and tells his brothers. It's an exposure, a spreading of what should have been kept completely private. He basically turns his father's weakness into information. But Shem and Japheth, they move completely differently. They take a garment, lay it across their shoulders, and deliberately walk backward. They cover their father without even looking at him. It's one of the most delicate, powerful images in the text. They absolutely refuse to violate their father's dignity. Here is the crucial point to take away from this. The future is shaped by how we handle vulnerability. This single private moment foreshadows the entire moral and spiritual divergence of the future nations. It proves to us that humanity's trajectory isn't just going to be about who has the most raw strength, or who's the most intelligent, or who can build the biggest cities. The future is fundamentally shaped by reverence. It's shaped by how we handle the fragility of others. And from this quiet little scene in a tent, the narrative begins to unfold into 3 distinct civilizational patterns.
Number 1. Shem, the line of spiritual continuity.
Let's start by looking at Shem. His lineage becomes the stream defined by reverence, by sacred memory, and by a deep faithfulness to the divine relationship. You can see how beautifully this plays out over time. Starting with year 1 and Noah's preservation, we move to the first generation and Shem's foundational act of reverence. That ripples down through the generations until we eventually get Abraham and the establishment of the covenant. Centuries later, this exact same line produces the great prophetic tradition. The incredible spiritual inheritance of the biblical story emerges directly from Shem's act of covering and protecting dignity.
We can define this specific trait of Shem's line as spiritual inheritance. Basically, that's the continuity of the divine relationship, that persistent calling upon the name of the Lord through specific ancestral lines. Because he was the one who walked backward to preserve his father's honor, his line becomes the one that preserves the spiritual honor of humanity. Shem represents the thread that carries covenantal history forward into the new world. When everything else gets noisy and empires start rising and falling all over the place, Shem's line is the quiet, continuous heartbeat of humanity's relationship with the divine.
Number 2. Ham, the line of power and early kingdoms.
But what about the brother who stepped outside of reverence? Ham's legacy builds a completely different trajectory, and it's incredibly complex. It's defined by massive dynamic energy, rapid expansion, and the early formation of human culture. Just look at the powerful early empires that spring directly from him. You've got Egypt, defined by its immense structural power. There's Canaan, carrying forward that deep relational misalignment.
You see Cush driving early cultural formation. And eventually, you get Nimrod, the absolute embodiment of imperial ambition. There is incredible creativity and structural achievement in Ham's line for sure, but there's always a deep underlying tension. It's this constant struggle between immense civilizational power and a fundamental lack of reverence.
And this tension is exactly why, after the incident in the tent, Noah speaks prophetic words over his sons, focusing particularly on Ham's son, Canaan. This isn't just random anger, it's a deep, profound realism. Choices regarding honor and authority have real, lasting consequences. Patterns of the heart absolutely extend across generations. The internal moral choices we make in one era often echo loudly in the empires built by the next.
Number 3. Japheth, the expanding line.
Finally, we come to the third brother. Japheth is the embodiment of humanity's outward movement. If Shem is about deep roots and Ham is about towering structures, Japheth is about the wide, open horizon. He represents humanity's innate impulse to spread out into the wider world. His descendants fulfill that basic human drive to enlarge and occupy space. In a natural progression, they move outward, they explore vast, unknown territories. They settle in distant regions, and as they do, they multiply into a massive variety of diverse cultures. There's a beautiful openness and geographic enlargement associated with Japheth.
His legacy brings about the sprawling diversity of the nations. We're talking broad geographic expansion, incredible human migration across continents, distant region settlement, and the emergence of rich cultural diversity. In fact, many historians trace the massive Indo-European language family, which includes everything from English to Hindi, right back to this Japhethic expansion. They literally fill out the map of the renewed earth, turning a single family into a vibrant mosaic of peoples.
Now, as we step back and look at these three distinct streams, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, we have to remember the overarching narrative. The flood produced a preserved humanity, not a flawless one. All of these diverging nations, whether they're building massive pyramids, spreading across distant coastlands, or quietly preserving a divine covenant, still carry the exact same human mixture. They all hold the same capacity for tremendous dignity, terrifying fragility, bold faith, and ruthless ambition.
But here's the core takeaway we can't forget. Division does not erase unity. Yes, the nations spread out. Yes, they develop completely different languages. Empires rise and inevitably, conflicts multiply across the globe. But beneath all of that geography, they are deeply connected. They all share Noah. They all share the memory of the flood. Humanity remains one single family, even when it no longer lives as one.
These sons act as the bridge between a world completely destroyed and a world beautifully diversified. They carry the unresolved human condition onto a much, much broader stage. But, human nature being what it is, people rarely want to stay scattered forever. We crave unity. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question. What happens when this wonderfully diverse, scattered humanity attempts to artificially gather itself back together, not around God, but around its own sheer strength? Well, that unavoidable desire sets the stage perfectly for a man named Nimrod, a plain in Shinar, and the looming, ambitious shadow of the Tower of Babel. But we'll have to save that fascinating story for another time.